Claire, can you come into the room for a minute? We have a little thank you for you, Justin said, still wearing his headphones. I stood up, slowly, not because I was tired, but because when you are called to thank someone for the first time in 25 years without warning, it's not a thank you. It's something else. But I smiled. The hall was not decorated. There was only one cardboard box with pens under the table. I noticed it first. Someone brought a Charlotte from the dining room. Someone turned on Simply the Best from YouTube. And I stood up in front of the people with whom I had shared more time than my own daughter. We want to thank you for everything. You've been the lifeblood of this department, Justin said, and HR manager Brenda nodded, clutching a red folder. We're moving to a new model, an automated one. And, unfortunately, the new structure doesn't include a department as such. We know it's not about you, it's about the future. You always said not to be tied to positions, he added, as if it were a compliment. I didn't argue. I just listened. And I thought about how the pair of jeans I had once ordered online was still in my locker behind the white air conditioner filter, and that now I would have to get them out of there. And then there's the flash drive. It was in my bag. Small, old, silver. There was code on it, the initial raw code, the code I wrote in 2019, when the system had no name, only logic. I didn't share it with the team. Not for ulterior motives, it was just too experimental. But it worked. And it formed the basis of what is now called our breakthrough product. I held the box, it was a little damp on the bottom, and watched the presentation end. Someone even tried to run a slideshow with photos from team buildings. And I counted how many people avoided my gaze. We ran into her at the door. Claire, you're still here? Joanna from the PR department smiled. Owen asked me to tell you that he's going to present the updated system on Monday. He says it's revolutionary. It's going to give us a 30% increase in efficiency. I nodded. And finally, I felt something in my throat, not tears. It was patience. This system is not new. It was written by me, and it was not plus 30%. A 38-7. And I can prove it. But I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. Startups are a new religion, and Owen Tanner has become our messiah. He's 34, but he looks 29, with that eternal slight mess in his hair and a tennis muscular frame under his cashmere hoodie. He doesn't wear jackets. He wears confidence. He speaks fast. He makes jokes so that no one laughs out loud, but everyone smiles because it's Owen. His appointment was announced as part of a transformation phase. We had to update our approach and expand digital synergies. While I was translating these phrases into human language, he had already canceled 5 regular meetings and replaced our logistics accounting system with adaptive integration. That is, with Notion and Google Sheets. Just because it was convenient before doesn't mean it's right, he told me once in the kitchen. Sometimes what was convenient was effective, I replied, putting the cup on the heat. I didn't know then that he didn't drink coffee at all. He lives on peptides, avocados, and presentations. Owen did not come alone. His team is young, shiny, like new interfaces. They are always wearing headphones. They are always releasing something. Their screens look like holidays, bright, with graphs, with colorful tags. But when I once asked them to send me raw data, they made big eyes. It's all through the API, one said. And the logistics? Well, you can visually see where the failure is, said another, flipping through the board in Miro. That was not what was funny. In the first sessions, Owen introduced himself as a Deloitte guy who's tired of PowerPoint. And in the second week, he gave us a master class on PowerPoint. He was adored, and that's why I was wary, because one of the first prototypes he presented at the general session looked too familiar. In the structure, in the language of fields, in the logic of filters, in the details that I had intentionally made nonlinear so that the system would not seem template-like. It was my code, my architecture, but with his brand. I was silent, for the time being, because 1 fact is a suspicion, 2, a pattern, 3, a case. And while I was silent, he canceled my former department. He called it too linear. His team created an operational headquarters with no logistics experience, but with AI solutions. And that's when I received an email from the patent office, confirmation of registration. It was addressed to me. It was dated 2 years ago, a system that I didn't dare to present at the time, but sent as a proof of concept anyway. The flash drive in my bag got heavier, not physically, symbolically. It was no longer just a copy of the code. It became a witness. I was 38 when I started writing the first modules, on weekends, at night, between business trips, without a contract, no KPIs, simply because all the systems we were working with seemed clumsy to me. I didn't want a revolution. I wanted data not to fall down, projects not to stick together, and search to work like Google, not like the library in Pechishchani village. When we implemented the first version of the internal portal, I broke down. Not physically, aesthetically. What we rolled out looked like a school website from 2004, and then I just started my own version, without permission, but also without malice. I wrote it for myself, sometimes for my colleague from the archives. I tested it on copies, recorded each change in a separate log, stored backups on encrypted flash drives. Once I even uploaded the archive to the cloud with a password in honor of my favorite cat. At the time, the word policy violation seemed like something from a TV show, not from my life. But in the 3rd minute of Owen's speech, something clicked in my throat, not loudly, like a mouse click, small, but inevitable. In particular, dynamic categorization and, importantly, a modular data hierarchy, he said. And it was not just similar terminology, it was my term. Modular hierarchy was my name. I came up with it in 2019, in March. On the day our warehouse flooded, and I thought that we needed to structure not only things, but also data. I wrote in my file then, MIEDES is a modular hierarchy for dynamic systems. I was still joking. It's like IKEA, but without nuts. And now I see it, on the slide, without a single line of code. Just a beautiful word and a beautiful shirt, which probably hasn't been tagged yet. I was sitting at the back of the room, formally a guest. My name still hung in the system as senior specialist in the operational structure. But I was no longer our Claire. I was Miss Sommers, and Owen was the new face of transformation. I watched him click on. How he explains context-sensitive aggregation. This is actually my bug from the second sprint, which I later used as a feature. When he opens the section on dynamic data routing, and I almost smile because I remember exactly how I named that folder in the archive. Not _a_bug, _lazy_sorting _v3. He was applauded. Everyone applauded, even those who used to sit next to me at weekly meetings. Even Andy, who had been putting tea bags in my mug for years because it was already warm. And I was silent. But something in me was no longer silent. I took a notebook out of my bag. It was old, with frayed edges and coffee stains. I opened it to the last page. It read, "When you know it's time, don't write emotions, write an algorithm." I wrote it down slowly. 1. Check the latest internal backups. 2. Compare database structures. 3. Find confirmation of the date of first use. 4. Wait for an error. Because it will happen. With him. In the system. In people who play kidnappers of the future without even knowing its skeleton. And then he will either admit it, or apologize, or he will fall. But not me. Not this time. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm clock. Not from anxiety. I woke up with the exact realization that time was up. The kitchen still smelled of mint after yesterday's tea. I put the cup down, turned on my laptop, an old Dell, a good 10 years old, but it had one priceless thing on it, the D-disk. That was where my ghosts lived, or rather, my system. Folders that started with alt_, archives with names like V8 _ almost final _ final _ real final.zip, screenshots of the interface, the logic of work, even a video with a demonstration. In one of them, I tell the camera how conditional routing works. I am wearing a sweater, no makeup. I say, I won't show this to my colleagues, but someday, maybe someone will look at it and say, yeah, she did it. I pause the video. The face on the screen is mine, but a few years younger, steady, concentrated, a little tired. That same day, I wrote my first letter, but not to lawyers, to former ones, to old colleagues who still worked at the company. I knew who could be touched with a few words. Do you remember that first prototype where I joked about IKEA and sorting? The response was, yeah, I remember. You said back then that if you ever disappeared, we should look for you in the backups. I smiled. Good. They remember. And when I decided to take a break, I got another letter, from Emily, the new one. I hardly knew her. She had joined shortly before I was laid off. But she wrote confidently, albeit a little cautiously, Miss Sommers, I'm sorry to write to you directly. I was at that demo with Owen, and I've worked with open source projects at MIT before, and some of the elements, even the variables in the code, are similar to your system that I was told about. If you want, I can check the Git logs for access, but only anonymously. It's not safe. We have a signed NDA. There it was. Owen was not just a good speaker. He played the long game, and he played alone. He didn't need a team. He needed their silence. He didn't come to the company to create. He came to repackage, to take the old, give it a gloss, put a logo, and tell them that this is his vision. And to everyone else, NDA, non-disclosure agreement, dumb, legally fixed. And if someone did not agree to keep quiet, they no longer had a job. And so did I. I opened my notebook and finished writing. 5. NDA. Check the dates and signatories. 6. Prepare my application to the patent office. Yes, I am not a lawyer, but I knew the difference between create and steal. The next week, I made an appointment with an intellectual property lawyer. She was a woman with chain glasses, a firm voice, and a slightly dry sense of humor. She looked at me and said, If you have the source materials, logs, creation dates, code elements, and you haven't transferred the rights, this is your product. The only question is how publicly it was used. I answered, Not publicly, but Owen's system is public, and it's almost a copy. She just nodded. Then it's a matter of time, and jurisdiction. I did not rush into battle. I did not send letters. I did not call journalists. I just sat down in my office, not in the office, but at home, among books and old documents, and opened a new file. Subject, Internal IP Review Materials, Draft. From Claire Sommers. To TBD. I didn't know who I was going to send it to in the end, but it had to be ready. First, I started with the date. The first line of code is March 17th, 2019. The name of the variable is stream_sort_delta. I came up with it during an argument with Simon, my boss at the time, when he once again said, Claire, everything is working fine. Why complicate it? But this complication allowed us to avoid duplication in the system. And now I saw it in Owen's demo. It's exactly the same. Even with the same error, which I fixed only a month later. Next, the API diagram. He had the same visualization. I drew it by hand on an A3 sheet of paper taped to the wall. But what threw me off track was the clean trigger weekly parameter. It was my hidden command. I added it at the beginning as a joke. It was like a technical Easter egg. It didn't have a direct function. It just triggered additional log cleaning. No one knew about it except me. No one was supposed to know. It appeared in Owen's documentation as innovative self-service logic. I closed my eyes. It was time. The next day, I went back to the law firm. I was met by the same lawyer, Caroline. This time, I came with a box. Not with things, with evidence. She recognized it at first sight. You have been seriously preparing. I'm not a lawyer, I replied, but I know what originality is. We spread everything out on the table. Flash drives, screenshots, videos, timestamps, and a notebook. My notebook. Everything is in their dates, phrases, quotes, links, even stickers with the drinks I was drinking when I wrote that code. It was my story, encoded in ideas. We can formalize this as a preliminary confirmation of authorship, Caroline said, and launch a request for consideration of copyright infringement. But the important thing is, do you want to go public? I thought about it. My answer was simple. No, but I want them to know that I know. That evening I wrote to Emily. You asked how you could help. I have a list of variables that match my code. If you have access, you can only change them. No risk. If you find something, send it to me as a private archive. I won't reveal your name." She agreed. At 2:46, I received the file. dump_internal_of_check.emil.zip. There were 6 screens inside. 4 of them are copies of my functions. 2 are metadata. And the last line, created by user Owen T. at May 12, 2022. The date I was first kicked off the development team. I closed my laptop, and I just sat in the dark for a long time. I wasn't angry. It wasn't indignation. It was something else, like watching someone sign a painting with your brush. Now I had a choice. Either act publicly or create a trap. A trap where the first step would be silence. Because silence is also a choice. And in my case, it was a precise dosage of force. Everyone has their own tools. They have Slack reactions. I have stapled folders, certificates with dates, and an old flash drive in a white envelope. I took an inventory. 14 documents. 8 are signed. 4 are with QR certification, and 1 with the CEO's wet signature from 2020. The one where I was officially appointed responsible for the project infrastructure. After that, I spent another 11 months writing my night-side prototype, a shadow version of the system that no one believed in. But it was there. It was working. I just didn't have time to show it. Now I had to prove that I could not only show it, but also ensure it. Owen did what all self-confident men with New Age status do. He presented the innovative system at an industry forum. I watched it online. Same slide, the same font, the same 3 circles that I drew on the whiteboard in our warehouse in August 2021, when I was still wearing my uniform and drinking coffee out of a paper cup. He called them Cloud Core Components. I called them a small revolution without permission. I opened Google Drive. I created a separate folder with Only for Me access. I called it Ecolodge. Inside were a copy of each archive, a letter from my lawyer, and my notes. And a presentation. The one I created not for the crowd, but for one audience. The board of directors. I didn't have access to it. Not yet. But I knew the address of one person on that board. David Green. He used to be my boss's mentor. One of those who remembered me back when I launched the first temperature monitoring system in 2003. I found his email, and I wrote to him. Subject: Data Architecture, Internal IP Integrity Concern, Confidential. David, I wouldn't have reached out to you directly if it were a matter of offense or ambition. This is an issue of authorship and reputational risk for the entire platform. Attached is a technical comparison, timestamps, and a description of my original prototype. All I ask for is an independent internal audit. I don't give interviews. I do not speak on forums. But I will not remain silent if this innovation is patented under someone else's name. Sincerest regards, Claire Sommers. I put my laptop down. At that moment, I did not feel triumphant, not even fear. It was like flipping a switch in an old substation, not loudly, but with consequences. 2 days later, I received an answer, a laconic one. Claire, I read it. I'll stay in touch. This is serious. D. The next step was to meet with Caroline. I brought an old flash drive, the one with Nightside V0. 1. We extracted the timestamps through a digital archive verification service. The date of creation was May 15, 2020. The date that Owen indicated as the start of development is April 2022. That was it. It was a gap. I had the code. I had the date. I had a person on the board of directors who committed to taking a closer look. I came home, and for the first time in months, I cooked dinner not from delivery, but from what was in the fridge, broccoli risotto, and a glass of white wine, not to celebrate, to capture the moment. I hadn't won yet, but now they had to know that from now on, silence would not be a choice, but a strategy. The morning started with a message. It was an ordinary, unremarkable message. Can you come in on Tuesday at 1 p.m. for an internal technical audit meeting? The sender was the company's legal department. The topic is technical compliance of copyright data. I read it twice. Of course, they did not write investigation, and they wouldn't say it out loud. But I knew. The car moved. The silence cracked. At 12:58, I was already sitting in the meeting room. Cold light, a plastic carafe of water, a cup with the inscription, "Innovation starts here." Well, well. Across from me was the company's lawyer, the internal auditor, and, unexpectedly, Owen. He didn't make eye contact, but he knew how to keep a straight face. "Miss Sommers," the lawyer began in a steady voice, "we appreciate your cooperation. We have been invited to verify the compliance of the system elements claimed in the patent application." I nodded. I didn't say anything. "You provided some materials. Today, we want to hear your opinion on the key elements, specifically the routing modules and the kernel architecture framework." Owen is finally speaking. "We respect Claire's previous work, but I'm sure it's just a coincidence. In modern systems, the architecture can be similar. It doesn't prove authorship." I slowly opened the folder. "A coincidence," I said, "doesn't have the same variable name, the same IP, and the same bug on line 37 that I forgot to fix in version 0.2. I took out the sheet. "Here's a screenshot. The time log. Comparison with your slide." Silence. Owen sighed. He didn't argue, but he didn't agree. Typical tactic. "It's hard to prove. That's why I'm not asking for an apology. I'm offering a solution," I said. "A license agreement, a legal settlement, no trial, no press, but with a name." The lawyer silently wrote it down. The next day I received a second message, this time from an unknown address. "He is afraid, but he has not yet realized how much. Go ahead." I smiled. Emily, a small internal beacon in the system. No one knows that she handed me the file, the repository structure, the logistics of the changes. All the documents have Owen's account stamp on them. The IP is the same as the one that was recorded in the admin panel in September 2022. I handed over all the data to Caroline, my lawyer. "We're ready," she said. "We have the basis for a preliminary application to the patent office and a warning letter to the company." "Send it," I said, "but not yet." "Why not?" "Let him move a little more." I was in no hurry. I didn't need him to be fired tomorrow. I needed him to know that his movements were under a microscope, that every presentation, every record, every line of code would cause him to tremble slightly. Because somewhere, someone has a flash drive, with the old code, and with my name on it. Meanwhile, I was walking along the river, without a phone, without headphones, and I thought, how many other women have ever handed over a folder and never checked what happened to it? Not this time. This time, I didn't just check. I restored it. And no one could tell me that it was an emotion. It was a structure, with evidence, with logic, with silence, which cuts more than a microphone. In the morning, I received a short message on my email. "We have been invited to a dialogue with Miss Sommers' representatives. Until the situation is resolved, please suspend public mention of the patent." The sender was the CEO of the company. And here's the interesting thing. When the CEO writes without a copy of the PR department, without a copy of the CFO, without any emoticon, this is not diplomacy. This is fear. The same day, I got a call from the press service. "Miss Sommers, we are preparing a speech for a conference in Berlin, and we were planning to include your platform as a company case study." "I'm not in the company anymore," I replied. A pause. Then a cautious voice. "What do you mean?" "I mean, mine is what you now call Owen Layer, but it was not created by Owen." "We'll record it." "No need to fix it. Just take my name off." "I don't consent." Caroline, the lawyer, had a Zoom with the company's legal team that same week. I sat on the sidelines, listening. I didn't interfere. "Our position is simple," she said. "We are not threatening. We are offering a settlement." "In the form of what?" "A license agreement. Miss Sommers is credited as the author. The company gets the right to use it, without exclusivity. But Owen's private firm is removed from the ownership structure. This is unprecedented. No more unprecedented than filing a patent in someone else's name." Then there was silence. A long one. Tense. Until I saw the recording. The video of Owen's presentation now deleted, but saved in my Dropbox. He is standing on stage and speaking. We built this system from scratch, without any previous frameworks. I pressed pause. On the screen behind him is a window with my test interface. Even the bug was the same, the one I hadn't fixed in version 1.0. The date on the slide is a year before he was hired. 2 days later, I got a call from David Green from the board of directors. "Claire," he said, "this will be resolved, but it will take some time. We are in negotiations, and not everyone understands the scale at once." "Let them understand slowly," I replied. "I've been waiting for 4 years. A couple more weeks won't kill me. Do you want to come back?" "No. I want my name to be where it was, not where they hid it." While they were negotiating, I received a letter from another unexpected address. It was an old friend from the incubator where I used to test the alpha version of the system. "We can take your platform as a separate service, separate from their brand. Shall we talk?" I saved the email to my after folder. Outwardly, I remained silent. No post, no interview. Just a short comment on LinkedIn. When your work is not named after you, it is not lost. It's just temporarily undocumented. There are 1234 likes under the post, and among them is a familiar profile. Owen. No reaction, just looking at it. I imagined him sitting in his office, looking at my post and trying to figure out if it was a threat or just a statement. And that was my favorite part, because the answer was both at the same time. Owen's speech was canceled. It was said very nicely. Postponed due to scheduling, due to changes in strategy. Thank you for your work. But we all know what gratitude smells like when someone has just lost the right to the microphone. In the mail, a letter from a conference in Berlin. "Miss Sommers, we have learned that you are the author of the technology we were planning to present. Would you allow us to give you the floor as an independent developer?" It was an interesting construction. "Let me give you the floor." I read it again, then again. They didn't ask me if I wanted to. They already knew what I wanted. They were just waiting for a formal yes. So I wrote, "On one condition, I'll be the last to speak." There was a strange silence in the company. I received messages from former colleagues, most of whom had previously congratulated Owen on his breakthrough. Now their messages began with, "I didn't know. If I had known." "You're not offended, are you?" I didn't answer. And I was not offended. There was something sweet in these apologies. They came naturally, without being forced, because the truth is, like time, if you don't rush it, it comes anyway. Emily sent a new file. This is an internal email from February. He asked the IT department to change the name of the module to his abbreviation. He says it will speed up the legalization of development, but you'll see your original slug in there. I opened it. The abbreviation is OTML, Ewan Tanner Machine Layer. But at the bottom was a commented line, #somproj_alpha_21. I didn't even change it. He didn't even hide it. David Green called again. "Claire," he said, "we've considered the license offer, but there is an option that may be better for everyone. I'm listening. We can offer you a role as an independent technical consultant, with copyright, a separate contract, and control over the further evolution of the product. No direct involvement in the structure." And Owen? His contract is being renegotiated. He doesn't lose his position, but he is temporarily removed from public presentations, until further notice. What do you want in return? That you don't go into conflict, and perhaps not to speak in Berlin. It's too late. The program is printed. When I arrived at the conference, I was given a badge with a signature. Claire Sommers, System Architect and Creator. And this was the first time that the word creator did not cause me shame or pain. It was a well-deserved word. It was clear. No X. Without quotation marks. I was the last one on stage. Before me, there were tech influencers, startups, and investors. Everyone was talking about synergy, revolution, and new era. I didn't speak loudly. I just opened a slide. There were 3 windows on it. Source code. Owen's version. A screenshot from an email dated 2019 with my pitch to the IT team. This is not a product yet, but it could be the future. If someone ever wants to steal it, I have everything documented. The room was silent for 4 seconds, and then applause. Not stormy applause, not standing, just full, sincere, without hysteria, without pathos, the kind you need when you regain not a status but a name. But a name. Raindrops were pounding on my train window. The Berlin station was pulling away slowly, like someone who stood back for a long time and then looked back. I was holding the conference program in my hands. My speech was circled with a marker. Someone left a comment in the margin. Finally, someone said it out loud. I smiled, and for the first time I didn't feel bitter or regretful in that smile. In the morning, my lawyer called me. "Congratulations," she said. "The deal has been approved by the board of directors. You will be publicly referred to as the author of the system architecture. You will have a say in all changes to the core of the system. And Owen? He'll stay on, but on other projects, this one is no longer his." I nodded. It wasn't a victory in the classic sense. It was a return of balance. A new board appeared in the lobby of the main office. It hadn't been there before. It read, "Company Innovations Over the Last Decade." There were project names, dates, photos of the teams, and my name, no fanfare, without a frame, just as it should be. Someone wrote in small print the phrase that struck me the most. Invisibility is not absence. It is a state of not being seen. I went into the old laboratory where I spent my evenings after my main job. The table was empty, but on the shelf was my old notebook. It hadn't been thrown away. On the first page was a diagram of the system. On the second page was a list. What to do if someone says it's not yours. I wrote it as a joke at the time, and now I have fulfilled each point. A week after the conference, I received a letter from the CEO, personally. "Claire, thank you for staying within the framework of the dialogue. Thank you for not making a war out of it. What you did taught us more than any audit." I saved the letter as a PDF, but I did not respond. Not out of anger. I just had nothing to add. I returned home to find the same box with the logo on it that I had put my things in on the day I left. Now it contained a copy of the license agreement, the conference program, a flash drive with the archives, and a badge. The badge reads, "Claire Sommers, Creator." And this time I knew. You don't have to be loud to be an author. You don't need to take revenge to restore justice. Sometimes it's enough to just stay. But not in the shadows. The sun was already shining through the window. I made tea, opened my laptop, and created a new folder. I named it Next.